What if the biggest opportunity created by SpaceX isn't SpaceX itself? Imagine discovering the company's quietly helping build the future of space, not because someone promised overnight riches, but because they design the technologies, manufacture the components, and provide the services that make every successful launch possible. Most investors focus on the company making headlines. Experienced investors often ask a different question. Who supplies the suppliers? History has shown that during major technological revolutions, some of the biggest winners aren't always the companies everyone is talking about. They're often the businesses working behind the scenes, the ones providing the tools, infrastructure, and expertise that entire industries depend on. Today, we're exploring the industries and a few publicly traded companies that could benefit if commercial space continues expanding. This isn't about predicting the next stock to explode. It's about understanding how an entire ecosystem creates opportunities. And there's one investing lesson almost everyone misses. Once you see it, you'll never look at emerging industries the same way again. The big shift. For decades, reaching space was so expensive that only governments and a handful of contractors could afford it. Every launch required enormous budgets, years of planning, and accepted a high level of risk. That equation has been changing. Advances in reusable rockets have dramatically lowered the cost of getting payloads into orbit, making space more accessible to governments, research organizations, and private companies alike. As launch costs fall, more missions become economically viable, opening the door to new business models and industries. Think about it like building the interstate highway system. The biggest opportunity wasn't just constructing the roads. It was everything that became possible because those roads existed. Shipping companies, logistics networks, roadside businesses, manufacturers, and entirely new ways of connecting people and commerce. Commercial space could follow a similar pattern. Every additional launch can create demand for satellite manufacturers, semiconductor companies, advanced materials, communications equipment, mission software, data analytics, and specialized engineering services. When one part of an ecosystem grows, many supporting businesses may grow alongside it. But here's where many investors make a costly mistake. They spend all their time asking, which company will win? A more useful question is, which industries become more valuable if this trend continues? That subtle shift moves your thinking away from trying to predict a single champion and toward understanding how value flows through an entire ecosystem. Quick question. If SpaceX launches another 1,000 satellites tomorrow, who actually gets paid besides SpaceX? Take a second to think about it, because the answer is much bigger than most people realize. And it takes us to the first layer of this ecosystem that many investors overlook. Chapter 1. Satellites don't build themselves. When people think about the commercial space industry, they usually picture rockets lifting off. But rockets are only the delivery system. The real mission begins after the payload reaches orbit. Every satellite launched into space represents years of engineering and thousands of specialized components working together. It needs lightweight structural materials, high-efficiency solar panels, onboard computers, antennas, propulsion systems, sensors, thermal protection, batteries, and countless electronic components that can survive one of the harshest environments imaginable. Very few companies build every piece themselves. Instead, manufacturers depend on an enormous network of suppliers, each contributing a critical technology. As more satellites are launched for communications, navigation, scientific research, and Earth observation, demand may increase across many parts of that supply chain. Not just for the companies assembling the final spacecraft. This isn't unique to space. Think about the smartphone revolution. The companies assembling phones became household names. But businesses making processors, camera sensors, memory chips, display technology, and manufacturing equipment also experienced significant growth as the entire ecosystem expanded. Commercial space could follow a similar pattern. Rather than asking, which satellite company will dominate? Experienced investors often ask, which suppliers become more valuable if the entire industry keeps growing? That perspective changes everything. Instead of betting on one company, you're studying how value moves throughout an expanding ecosystem. But satellites can't reach orbit without another critical piece, and this next industry touches almost every launch. Chapter 2. The infrastructure behind every launch. A rocket launch may last only a few minutes. The preparation behind it can take months, or even years. Every successful mission depends on an enormous amount of infrastructure that most people never see. Launch facilities prepare rockets for flight. Ground stations communicate with spacecraft once they're in orbit. Mission control software monitors thousands of system checks. Tracking networks follow vehicles across the globe. Communication systems ensure commands and data move reliably between Earth and space. It's a massive technological orchestra. And unlike rockets, many of these businesses don't depend on a single launch to generate value. They often provide ongoing services, maintenance, software, cybersecurity, communication support, and mission operations long after a spacecraft reaches orbit. That can create recurring revenue opportunities as satellite fleets continue operating. Rockets are impressive, but without software, they're just very expensive fireworks. It's an amusing thought, but there's an important lesson behind it. As industries mature, software and services often become just as valuable as the physical hardware itself. Reliable operations, secure communications, and continuous monitoring can matter every day a satellite remains in service. Understanding those less visible parts of the ecosystem can help investors think beyond the launch itself. Yet even that isn't where many investors see the biggest long-term opportunity, because every spacecraft relies on something even more fundamental: the tiny pieces of technology that make intelligent systems possible. Chapter 3, Chips, the Hidden Engine. No matter how advanced a spacecraft looks from the outside, it ultimately depends on computers making thousands of decisions every second. Those computers need specialized semiconductors. Unlike consumer electronics, many space applications require chips designed to withstand radiation, extreme temperatures, and years of operation without maintenance. They also need processors capable of handling navigation, communications, imaging, and increasingly, artificial intelligence directly on board the spacecraft. As satellites become more capable, demand for advanced computing could continue growing across parts of the semiconductor and aerospace supply chains. Some publicly traded companies participate in these areas through advanced chip design, manufacturing equipment, or specialized aerospace electronics, though their exposure to commercial space varies and business relationships can change over time. This is where second-order thinking becomes powerful. Most investors see a rocket launch. Second-order thinkers ask what technologies become more valuable if launches become more frequent. More launches may lead to more satellites. More satellites can require more computing. More computing can increase demand for advanced semiconductor technologies. Instead of following headlines, they're following the chain reaction. Sometimes the most important investment question isn't who built the rocket. It's who makes the technology that every future mission might need. And here's where the story gets even bigger. Because space isn't only about rockets anymore. Chapter 4, AI meets space. For many years, satellites were primarily about communication and navigation. Today, they're becoming something much more powerful. They're becoming data platforms. Modern satellites continuously capture enormous amounts of information about our planet, tracking weather systems, monitoring crops, observing infrastructure, supporting scientific research, assisting disaster response, and providing insights that governments and businesses use every day. But raw data has limited value. Artificial intelligence is what transforms that data into useful decisions. AI systems can rapidly analyze satellite imagery, identify patterns, detect changes, improve forecasting, optimize logistics, and support applications across industries such as agriculture, environmental monitoring, defense, and supply chain management. In many cases, the value isn't created when the image is captured. It's created when that information becomes actionable. Think of satellites like smartphones. The hardware matters, but the software often becomes the real business. That's why the commercial space economy isn't just about launching more hardware into orbit. It's about building an ecosystem where launch providers, manufacturers, software developers, semiconductor companies, communications businesses, and AI innovators all contribute to creating value. And that's exactly what leads to the biggest investing lesson of all. As we reach the end of this journey, it's worth stepping back from the rockets, the satellites, and the headlines, because the biggest investing opportunities rarely begin with a single company. They begin with a fundamental shift in the world. When railroads transformed transportation, the winners weren't limited to the companies laying the tracks. When the internet changed communication, value wasn't created by one business alone. And when smartphones reshaped daily life, entire industries evolved around them. Commercial space may follow a similar pattern. So instead of asking, will SpaceX keep growing? Try asking a different question. If commercial space expands over the next decade, which industries become more valuable because of that growth? That single change in perspective can completely reshape how you evaluate opportunities. You're no longer trying to predict tomorrow's headline. You're trying to understand how innovation spreads through an entire ecosystem. Every successful launch has the potential to create demand that extends far beyond the launch provider itself. Infrastructure companies help missions get off the ground. Software businesses keep them operating. Semiconductor manufacturers enable increasingly capable onboard computing. Communications networks connect spacecraft with Earth. Advanced manufacturers build specialized components. Data companies transform information into insights that governments and businesses can actually use. The further you follow that chain, the more opportunities you begin to notice. But there's something equally important to remember. A growing industry does not guarantee that every company connected to it will succeed. Competition remains intense. Technology changes quickly. Valuations can become disconnected from business fundamentals. Even companies operating in promising industries can struggle if execution falls short or expectations become unrealistic. That's why disciplined investing is about far more than identifying an exciting theme. It's about developing a process that works across every market cycle. Here's a framework you can return to whenever a major technological shift begins. First, understand the long-term trend. Is this solving a real problem or is it simply attracting attention? Second, identify the ecosystem. Which industries, suppliers, software providers, and service companies stand to benefit if the trend continues? Third, evaluate business fundamentals. Look at revenue growth, profitability, competitive advantages, financial strength, and management execution rather than relying on headlines alone. Fourth, consider valuation and risk. Even an outstanding business can become a poorer investment if the price already assumes perfect execution. And finally, think in years, not weeks. The market often rewards patience far more consistently than excitement. Investing isn't treasure hunting. It's more like assembling a puzzle. The people who see the whole picture usually arrive before everyone else. That's the mindset this channel is built around. Not chasing every headline, not predicting the future with certainty, but learning how technological change creates opportunities and how disciplined investors can evaluate those opportunities with a clear framework instead of emotional reactions. The commercial space industry could become one of the defining economic stories of the coming decades. Whether that ultimately creates the greatest value for launch providers, semiconductor companies, communications firms, software developers, advanced manufacturers, data businesses, or companies that haven't even been founded, yet remains an open question. And that's exactly why curiosity matters more than certainty. The goal isn't to predict one perfect winner. The goal is to build a way of thinking that helps you recognize opportunity wherever innovation appears, because trends will change, technologies will evolve, markets will rise and fall, but disciplined thinking never goes out of style. If you found this perspective valuable, don't stop here. On your screen right now is breaking: Congress just bought these AI stocks. In that video, we examine publicly disclosed congressional stock trades connected to the AI sector and, more importantly, the framework for analyzing those companies thoughtfully instead of simply reacting to headlines. Click that video, keep building your investing knowledge, and I'll see you in the next one.